Hello and welcome to the August edition of Absolute Security's Patch Tuesday updates. I'm delighted to be joined by Rob Brown, Absolute Security's very own Patch Tuesday guru. He's going to run us through the vulnerabilities highlighted this month and give you the best possible advice on how to patch for them. Over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Justine. A very warm welcome to everyone joining us today on the Patch Tuesday webinar. It is the second half of the year, and usually around this time, the vulnerabilities start to decrease. Unfortunately, we've had another month of over 100 updates to talk about. Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about, like we always do, is the Windows life cycle. And I hope this is not a surprise. But Windows 10 Enterprise, the entire operating system, is going end of life on the 14th of October of this year. And if you haven't already, please make plans to migrate to Windows 11. We are recommending 24H2. And if you are an absolute customer, please do get in contact with us because we can actually help you with a playbook to help you seamlessly migrate from 10 to 11. If you're still using the server operating system 2012, you're actually in year 2 of that extended support, which actually will run until the end of next year, which is ESU year 3. And we will continue to supply Windows Server 2012 patches up until the end of that end of life. If you're using Windows 11 Enterprise 22H2, you will have till October of this year to upgrade to 24H2. However, if you are still using Windows 11 Home and Pro 23H2, which has life under the Enterprise banner until next year, you actually have until November of this year to migrate to 24H2. It's very, very close. And actually, a lot of customers that search for end of life 23H2 can get tricked into thinking that end of life is next year. For Home and Pro, it is 1 year sooner. And as I've mentioned, Windows 11 Enterprise 23H2, you have till next year. Now, this doesn't include any of the long-term servicing. So if you're on an LTSB or an LTSC license for Windows 10, then you actually have till 2030, nothing to worry about. You'll be able to continue getting your patches. Once an operating system does, however, go end of life, it can and often does have no more updates. And if you have no more updates, then sometimes the security tools you're using, like your antivirus, will actually go end of life as well. So you do need to keep the Windows feature update in life along with the operating system. Now, I don't usually talk about non-Microsoft updates on the Patch Tuesday webinar. However, this is quite serious, and I wanted just to highlight that we do have a zero-day vulnerability in WinRAR. This is very rare that you actually get such a weaponized attack with WinRAR. And this particular vulnerability is a path traversal vulnerability. It affects the Windows version of WinRAR. Now, the reason why this is so serious, actually, if we break this into plain English, a traversal is when an attacker can use the software, in this case WinRAR, to read or write files outside of the application itself. And perhaps if you were to write a file to the Windows startup area of the operating system, and perhaps that was a ransomware or a payload that could launch an attack, then the next time the PC reboots, it would be launched under the system privilege, in this case, full system compromise. It's extremely serious. It is, however, more serious under WinRAR because they don't have an auto update mechanism. So the only way to get the next version of WinRAR is to install the next version of WinRAR. Now, in the Absolute platform, we actually will uninstall and reinstall WinRAR to the next version anyway. That's what we do under all of our third-party patching capabilities. So we're always uninstalling the previous version and installing the next version because a lot of these third-party applications don't have an auto update. And of course, waiting for your users or depending on your users to do it is simply not an option. So please, if you are using WinRAR and you don't have version 7.1.3 installed, please go ahead and uninstall it and reinstall it. Now, if we take a look at Patch Tuesday, like I said, we have 100 updates. There's another big release this month. 18 critical, 90 important. We had one moderate, which actually we're going to talk about. Of the 109, 9 were more likely to be weaponized. However, none actually are, which is good. This is the second month in a row we've had no weaponized bugs in the Patch Tuesday release. Please do, however, keep an eye out for what's known as an out of band OOB update. For the last 2 months, we've had an out of band update, which was a update which fixed an update that Microsoft released, but they didn't recall the previous. So they release a critical update and then they release an out of band update, and you need both of them together. Interestingly enough, the out of band updates that were released by Microsoft over the last 2 months were NA severity. And so a lot of our customers were surprised that we were deploying that update because of the severity, without realizing that we were doing so because it was replacing a critical vulnerability. And that was why it was strategically selected for deployment. We have 1 public aware vulnerability and 7 jump points. And we're going to come to jump points a little bit later on because we have an Easter egg in our Patch Tuesday write-up where I actually will explain each of those jump points. From feedback from our YouTube and all of the lovely emails we get, they want to know more about jump points. So I've actually gone into a lot of detail of what a jump point is and how serious it is when you have a vulnerability that has that scope change. Let's take a look at our leaderboard. Now, the second month in a row, we have elevation of privilege at the top of the leaderboard. And in interesting enough, this is actually the second most serious type of bug there is. But for the second month in a row, it's at number 1. So there are 44 elevation of privilege fixes. That's where a threat actor gains access to an employee's account and bypasses that proper authorization channel and successfully grants themselves access they're not supposed to have. At the second spot, which is the most serious, is remote code execution. We have 35 of those fixes. That's a class of cyber attack in which attackers remotely execute commands to place malware or other malicious code on your computer or network. It's extremely serious. If you have these vulnerabilities in your organization, please consider using remote code execution as a default selection priority in your patching strategy. Information disclosure, 18 of those. That's when a system unintentionally reveals sensitive information, such as a memory leak in the memory or the processor that allows you to read passwords as they are passed through to the operating system. Spoofing refers to an attacker pretending to be someone they're not and gaining unauthorized access. There are 7 of those. Denial of service is simply to stop the system from working, to crash or freeze a service. We have 4 of those. And lastly, tampering. That means they can change something like settings or files that they're not supposed to be able to do because the security protocols in place doesn't stop them from doing that. We just have 1 of those. And we have no feature bypasses this month. Now, if you have access to the Absolute Console, this is a recommended patch risk profile that we use for our professional services customers, where we take multiple factors of a vulnerability into consideration instead of just 1 single factor or 2 factors, which usually is the vendor severity and the CVSS score. The vendor severity is the vendor's issued severity, and usually it's critical, high or important, medium, low, and NA, with critical being the most serious and NA being the least serious. But this is at the discretion of the vendor. And a lot of updates, example I just gave with the outer band was released with an NA severity, perhaps wasn't being deployed when actually it's very, very serious. And a lot of the Google Chrome updates are also issued with a vendor severity of NA. So you can't just rely on the vendor's own severity rating to choose the patches to resolve the vulnerabilities that pose the highest risk to your organization. That is why we also like to include the CVSS score as a default, as a minimum actually. The CVSS score is a calculation out of 10 that also carries the critical, high, medium, low, and NA ranking, but it is independently scored through a calculator. So basically the type of vulnerability that could exploit, whether it's information disclosure, full system compromise, the difficulty of how that vulnerability is exploited goes into that calculator. And that calculation is actually very accurate, and it can be completely different to the vendor. So sometimes you have a vendor rating of NA, a CVSS score of critical, and if I was building a patch risk profile, I would perhaps want to use whichever of the two was higher as my selection criteria. And that way you can always choose the most severe vulnerabilities to patch. The next two are the state of the vulnerability. It's weaponized and public aware. Weaponized means that it's in an active attack situation. Somewhere through our partners or through the vendors, they're saying that this CVE is under active attack. It might not be widely under attack, but it's under attack somewhere. And that's very serious if something is under active attack, because it means that someone knows how to do it. Public aware means that the precise blueprint to exploit the vulnerability is published somewhere on the internet. Now, sometimes you get weaponized vulnerabilities that are never public aware, and vice versa. If you have a vulnerability that is both weaponized and public aware, then it's under active attack, and the exact method to exploit is also published, meaning that it's potentially susceptible to future and further attacks. So when you do have the two, you do need to pay extra attention. Luckily for us, for the second month in a row, we have none which are both weaponized and public aware, which is good. Now, to balance the risk, we have countermeasures. Countermeasures are mitigations or workarounds, and the vendors do often give countermeasures to us, which we can deploy much faster than the patch. Now, imagine these cumulative updates for Windows can be extremely large. Some of them have been as much as 2 gigabytes over the last couple of months. And deploying 2 gigabytes of patch plus the .NET plus your third party simply may not be feasible if you have an organization that is global, across territories and across continents. So you can take those countermeasures, and if you have a playbook system which can automate the modification of registry keys or services, or the removal of files, or the changing of security, you can mitigate that vulnerability much faster. So for example, if one of the countermeasures was to apply a registry key that would mitigate the vulnerability completely, then perhaps if you have a playbook style solution, you can apply that registry key to your devices within hours, mitigating the vulnerability. Please, however, always read the details of the vendor guidance. The vendor guidance will tell you whether that countermeasure should be removed when you've applied the patch. So if the patch is installed and those registry keys or those files or those changes to the system that have been applied, if they need to be reversed, please make sure you reverse them. And finally, your exposure. Of course, we're not going to automatically deploy critical vulnerabilities to your organization if there are other vulnerabilities which have massive exposure but have slightly less severe vulnerabilities that are perhaps weaponized. In that case, we want to use a scoring system. We want to rank them according to your exposure. Every organization is different. And in fact, under our own managed services customer base, a lot of patches that are chosen for one customer are different to other customers. So your organization is completely unique. So you do need to have the strategy that is unique to your own organization. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to pop over to the Absolute website, where we've actually put everything onto the site for you. This gets published on Patch Tuesday. So although we would love you to join here on the live broadcast and on YouTube, please feel free to look at the Absolute website blog for details on the release. So if you pop across to absolute.com, under the resources section, you'll find all of our great resources regarding our blogs and events and webinars that we also have going on all of the time. Under here, you'll find the blog with all of the blogs we have. Here is the Patch Tuesday link, and you'll be able to read this on Patch Tuesday along with my recommendations. Now, we do have quite a lot to cover here. Microsoft fixed updates for Windows, components, Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, MSMQ, GDI plus, NTLM. Don't worry what these mean. I'm going to explain what they all are and why they're relevant in a second. I like to use analytics from one month to the other. And in this month, we have a total combined CVSS score. So take every vulnerability, count all the scores up. We have a total score of 792, which is very serious because when you take the average score for each of those, it's 7.3. If you remember back, CVSS is out of 10. Anything from 9 and above is critical. Anything from 6.9 and above is high or important. So the majority of this release from a CVSS perspective was high severity. We have none, like I've mentioned, that are both weaponized and public aware, which is great. Now, I have chosen 5 ones to prioritize. So if you're not already choosing your strategy, please include these ones in your top 5. CVE 2025 50177, that's the Microsoft message queuing, MSMQ, remote code execution vulnerability. This is critical and has a CVSS score of 8.1. Improper handling of the MSMQ allows an attacker to execute arbitrary code. It is a remote code execution vulnerability, so it would automatically be prioritized by my team. Its attack vector is network, which means any network, including the internet. So if you have internet-facing devices with the message queuing enabled, this can be exploited. No user interaction at all, no privileges required. It does have high complexity. You do need to know the operating system. You do need to have a sophisticated attack. However, if it can result in complete server-side compromise. Very, very serious. My second one is 2025 53778. This is the Windows NTLM elevation of privilege. NTLM elevation of privilege is slightly less serious than I previously mentioned. Now, NTLM is Windows LAN Manager. It's basically the handshake that it allows you to log on with your authentication. And there is potentially an escape that is able to be done here, which means you could maybe access those credentials. If you can exploit it, you can gain system privileges to further exploit other vulnerabilities in the operating system. Has a severity of critical, a CVSS of 8.8. Its attack vector is network, which means any network including the internet, low privileges required, no user interaction, and low complexity. Now, this is saying that it could allow lateral movement within a domain or within an environment. And in fact, NTLM is used not just for system privileges, but also local logons are used, workgroup machines, or in fact, if you're using Kerberos in a domain situation, if the domain is no longer available, it will actually fall back to NTLM permissions, which it uses the last known password you entered. So any sort of changes to the password you've made won't necessarily be synchronized down, but Windows will still allow you to log in with that credential. Next is 2025 50165. This is a Windows graphic component remote execution vulnerability. And the next couple are actually really interesting because these are both related to booby-trapped files. So the Windows graphic component remote code execution vulnerability. This is an untrusted pointer deference in the graphics component of Windows. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is basically used when you're drawing anything or using text on your PC. You are actually able to sort of, if you can, exploit a file and have that file launched, even potentially in the preview pane, you're actually able to exploit that device for full system compromise without any user interaction. Literally, just having the file read by the UI can actually exploit it. This is a critical severity CVSS score of 9.8, which is the second highest. Well, actually, it is the highest. There are two of CVSS 9.8 in this release, with attack vector of network, with privileges required none, user interaction none, and low complexity. Extremely serious because this also is linked to a remote code execution. Fourth, CVE 2025 53766. This is the GDI plus. This is also graphics, and again, it's related to booby trap files. Now, in short, this is also used for drawing pictures and accessing text, but also is used when you're processing any sort of files like images, fonts, documents. So if you have any sort of web pages that are accessing or processing these files, potentially compromising one of those file extensions and placing it there could be used and launching this this particular vulnerability. Against remote code execution, improper memory handling in the GDI plus can allow that to happen. It has a critical severity CVSS of 9.8, attack vector is network, no privileges, no user interaction, and low complexity. This could become compromised. I'm very worried that it might become compromised once the actual ins and outs of the blueprint or that exact precise method to exploit, if it should become published or public, that is one to be wary, and keep your eye out on that CVE. It does change from time to time. If it does become weaponized, you need to react very, very quickly. Lastly, CVE 2025 53733. This is Microsoft Word. Again, it's to do with booby traps. Again, a file that is compromised. This is saying that there's an incorrect conversion between numeric types in Office, but effectively, if you can booby trap a file, then you can execute code on the device not protected by all of those other safeguards from Microsoft Word. This is critical. It's CVSS 8.4. Attack vector is local, so you do need access to the network, which makes it slightly less sort of risky, but still a compromise from within your network is possible under this particular vector. Privilege requires none, no user interaction, and low complexity. Now, why is user interaction none for a vulnerability that requires you to launch a compromised file? Well, that is because the preview pane is an attack vector. So if you do have the preview pane turned on in Windows, if you click the file, but don't double click the file, you can get this preview pane on the right-hand side. We're all familiar with it. We all probably use it in Outlook. You click the email, it opens the content, you can read it, you can then go ahead and delete it, or you can reply. Same thing in Windows exists inside the inside Windows Explorer. You go ahead and click a file, you didn't double click it, you just click it once, the preview pane comes up, bang, you've now got a compromise. Extremely serious. So if you are using Microsoft Word, please go ahead and make sure this gets deployed. I can probably imagine you've got Word on almost all of your systems. So please do make sure that is in your first deployment priority. As I mentioned, I've got some Easter eggs in this release for the first time following feedback, and we really appreciate the wonderful feedback. I've listed the jump points. They're quite difficult to find if you're not familiar with CVSS. It can be tricky to find all of the jump points. Now, what is a jump point? This is a type of lateral attack. So if a vulnerability can become compromised where the scope is called changed, then it means that if you exploit the vulnerability, then you can jump out of the trust boundary of that particular vulnerability. So in this example, number one on the list is a Hyper-V vulnerability, remote code execution. If you can compromise the guest, you can jump to the host, or vice versa. It does kind of make the hairs on my arms stand up, because that is extremely serious. If you can exploit the guest, potentially jump to the host, then potentially jump back to the other guests that are on that host could lead to a full environmental compromise, and that is certainly something we do not want. So if you have any of these 7 CVEs that we're here for you to download, please make sure you prioritize these ones. Some of them actually you don't have to worry about. You might have noticed there's a Azure OpenAI in here. This one is automatically fixed by Microsoft. Don't worry, it was purely released for guidance, so we don't have to address it ourselves. Thank you, Microsoft. But all of the others, I'm afraid, we do. Now, a lot of customers have mentioned when they take on board a professional service like we have, that they're concerned about deploying too many updates. So they have chosen the most critical vulnerabilities to remediate. So that would be the critical ones and the higher important ones. It is very important when you're prioritizing your patches to keep your environment safe. If you need to, separate the rollouts into groups. Deploy the most serious ones, deploy the less serious ones. I'm not going to say they're not serious, just they're less serious in terms of the risk of your organization. A lot of customers have adopted this process and have been incredibly successful. Do be aware though, any patch, even ones that are fully tested, can have an impact to your organization. They can have an impact, which is why unfortunately some customers adopt a critical only approach. But unfortunately, those other updates that aren't critical, aren't high, can become weaponized and have been known for a breach and ransomware, as we've heard over the last 12 months. Please, if you have the ability to build some resilience into your patching strategy, meaning that you are going to deploy the most critical vulnerabilities in the event of an issue, such as an update that is causing a problem, a blue screen, then build a resilient strategy into your organization that allows you to roll back those updates if they do cause an issue, and if there is a full system compromise, you're able to build a rollback to a gold image, and most importantly, at scale. So you are able to restore your organization in hours rather than days and weeks. It is very important that you prioritize all of the updates I'm recommending today, even if you don't necessarily have critical and high severity in your strategy only. That is why we've got our download sheet. Our download sheet here is a PDF. This is available as a call to action, as we like to call it. This is my priority based on the vector information, such as the vendor, the CVSS score, the weaponized status, etc. We've got a little risk there, which is telling us that this one at the top is more important than the others. Go ahead and put your action plan in here. Put your, say, for example, your company exposure, put it here, and then anything that is high exposure at the top of this list, go ahead and roll that out and keep your environment safe. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And if there's any questions anyone has, please do feel to get in contact. And until September, I wish you happy patching.
Thanks, Rob. That's brilliant advice. And thank you to our audience for watching this month's broadcast. So between the WinRAR installs, Windows end of life issues, and all the other Microsoft vulnerabilities, we hope you do get an opportunity to take a break. If you're planning to be out of the office, we would encourage you to adopt good practice measures to stay safe. That includes protecting the devices you travel with, using secure passwords, multi-factor authentication, limit your Bluetooth usage, keep devices locked away when not in use, and use a secure access solution if you need to access data while you're away from the office. Avoid public Wi-Fi and turn off your auto join option. Good one, that. And of course, make sure the software and security controls you have on your device are up to date and robust. Of course, a secure access solution can help massively there. And don't forget to lock away devices that you're not traveling with. Consider your out of office settings carefully. Only use them if absolutely necessary. And to prevent business email compromise attacks, consider adding a manual step to check fund transfer details by phone or in person. Finally, beware of phishing scams that have a topical theme, and never, ever pick up charging cables or thumb drives you see left lying around in an airport or a hotel lobby. I think that's about it. Obviously, do some research and stay safe out there. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
If you'd like more information on Absolute Security's products, then please visit our website at absolute.com. If you're looking for specific advice or help, then you can use the QR code here or visit our website and follow the URL for Connect with an Expert. Once again, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe.